this thing. So at number 5, what are we gonna do? We got a bunch of books to go to, but we gotta go with Superman. Now I was hoping they would stay together for a little while longer, but they did 3 issues together, which is that. I've already reviewed this. I showed you how great that was. Do I want to do? Let's do this one. Let's do this one. And this one, I recently was looking at this, even though this has Keith Williams doing background inks. And this is a cool return for the two of them. Right? This isn't action packed as this one here, but since I already did this one, it was being mainly a Luther issue, but it was just sort of a fun issue with the two of them together. Oh man, I skipped a bunch of pages. All right, so we had this, and I love this shot of Superman, and of course this one of the shots I was thinking about redrawing, but I wasn't drawing that much anymore. And then we had this great scene with Lana, and going in reverse instead of having Lana being tortured, saying, Superman do X, Y, Z, or I'll torture. Just torture her and then, leave their way. Superman showing a little anger. People got a problem with that, but just really a cool issue, right? It was cool to see these two guys back doing these 3 issues, stamping their claim at DC, and next thing we had Carl Kiesel, and they did a classic run on the title, right? So we did that. What's next? Do you think you know what next is? Next is What the? And you saying, what the? They did the Smacks of Vengeance. This would be Byrne's using his cartoony style, and it would be similar to, I guess, a lot of Wally Wood, but some Jack Davis, right? And Smacks of Vengeance is making fun of his acts of vengeance, right? So instead of fighting the villains, mixing up with different, still the villains mixing up with different characters, but they'd be from the DC universe. And it'd be DEESEE universe, right? And then Daredevil has his radar sense. And at this point in the 80s, this is because they'd done this issue here, and it hadn't been that strong. It was kind of this one of the shots I really liked, but there was some things in the background. It just doesn't look as cool. This stuff is cool here. There's some shots like this here, but it wasn't as strong. So I was like, oh, these two, I'm not sure if they could work. They like this panel here too, but this job here totally made up for it, right? And radar sense, and then runs into the jokester. All this stuff, even though it's like Mad Magazine, where it's a little cluttered, but that doesn't keep us from the fun and understanding what's going on, right? Sinesteroni, Wilhelmine, and here's where Byrne. Look at this. This is really gorgeous. All this stuff is really nice, right? Yeah, no, you don't like cartoon. People don't like the cartoony stuff. But then, because everyone else acts like they did it first. Oh, it's the Starline characters. But Byrne spoofed himself first. So every time people try to say, oh, this is the Vision is Casper, and the other character, the Red Ghost from the Harvey line. and Byrne is constantly did it first. So anyone who thinks they're witty, sorry guys, he beat you to it, right? Then he shows them again. It's just cool stuff. And I think this might have got him in trouble. And then he even spoofs himself. And this is a talking head scene, which nobody seems to understand. They say, we need to see background. So it's like, kids, be a real Marvel artist. Do your own excruciatingly detailed and distracting backgrounds to this page. When it's basically a part where you're supposed to tell what the story is. And then there's a couple other gags here. I'm saying all of the heroes are psychos now. And then we have Adam West and of course a spoof to Michael Keaton, and he sends there. So this was I really like this issue. Let's keep. I want to keep the Terry art there. So we got to issue. That was number 4. We have to go to Starlord, book that started it all. This would be the start of, actually, not sure how they got together on this book, but I know Byrne was already working with Chris Claremont, but Archie Goodwin was editor-in-chief. That's going to lead to something later. And Terry Austin on the bottom here. So this would be the classic X-Men team before they worked on the X-Men. And this is, I think, a sort of a tribute to Robert Heinlein. Right. So I think Terry Austin really wanted to do more of this together, but ultimately wound up doing the X-Men. So as you go further, the ship, they kept the sort of the basic layout of the ship in the Guardians of the Galaxy, but they've added a lot of bells and whistles to it, and it's not the ship that interacts with him that he's kind of bonded with. So yeah, this one, I think when this came out, I'm not sure where my original color version is, but I have the magazine of that too, with a new cover by Byrne and Austin. And we see Byrne had kind of shed a lot of his sort of faces and simplified them, so the kids look younger here without having that sort of thing. And it's Michael Golden did the first part, but yeah, the same issue in color, and it looks no different. It's really close to what the X-Men would become. I don't think the early books look as clean as this with them two together, but ultimately Archie Goodwin see this and would like this a lot, right? So really cool black and white story, right? So that's number 3. As we go, number 2, you didn't think it would be that. It's the X-Men. Sorry to do this to you. Gotta open this guy up. The other book is too hard to read, right? So we got this one. I don't want to get too far into reading this because we all know it. We've seen it before. I think I reviewed it. I don't know how solid that review is. The Days of Future Past. Chris Claremont and Byrne co-plotting. One of the cool things they have in this issue is, since there's a cast of a lot of characters, there are these poster shots, right? So Kitty isn't going to be doing a lot in this story, but she's the key to the story. So Byrne will be doing a lot of these shots where Kitty is the center of the frame while the action is going on. So she's not necessarily going to be doing anything that dynamic at times, but this is a way to sort of, well, also say how cool Kirby's X-Men outfits are. So it's really a dynamic shot, and having Kitty be the center of it. I mean, this some classic X-Men stuff possibly one of the favorites of fans. The death sort of scene here. I think even though there's if you see in this, the original art, Byrne still says we should have done Marvel team up together here because he wanted it to be more like Tom Palmer, some of these scenes here. But anyway, still gorgeous stuff. When you have these little bit of poster, I think I mentioned it before, where Byrne would do these shots where you would want to cut them out and put them on your wall right here. Even though it's a simple shot, it still kind of has that something you'd want to put on your wall. Same like this here, even though it's not and I always like these sort of 3/4 wide shots, even though it's not extreme wide. All right. So I'm gonna, since X-Men is so big, I can't just leave the X-Men right there. I gotta go to the next one. Now this, I bought this issue for like, I don't know, a couple dollars. Because I think my original was stolen. Well, I know my original was stolen. And it was stolen by a close friend of mine. But with kids, that's what kids do. Oh man, I need a book to put here for now. Let's move these guys over. This guy. So I just want to bring this one back. This one, Terry did the cover. He did the issues cover, the next issue also. So we're thinking, hey, why don't you just draw it too? So see, once again, Kitty would be the center of what's going on here, even though she's not going to be, she's going to lead up to something later. Mostly X-Men action, Kitty up in front. This nice cool shot here by them. Human element. Now, there's some weakness in this drawing here because this is Congress and it's hard to tell what's going on. It's not really that strong, but you're looking at the figures and you're saying it's cool as hell, so it don't matter. Don't matter. This is in Congress. Can't tell it's in Congress besides a cop and Senator Kelly, right? Can't tell it here either. So there's some issues there, but otherwise, who cares? No backgrounds there. Nobody cares. This is all still happening in Congress. Nobody ever pointed out that, hey, look at this. This whole thing takes place in Congress. And it's not till we get to this point where we're reminded that we're in Congress. That's a tough sort of way to start. To do a critique, but it's to say, everyone would talk about, I don't know, all these later books that didn't have backgrounds. And here you have a setup in Congress where you have this, but it's not something that anyone remembers. A couple heads here, Kelly, and here, you're not sure, but nobody cares. X-Men is rolling. This is another Byrne and Terry Austin cover here. And one of my favorite characters. You made this into a decent online video. I just want to get you some of the this right here. Another shot of Kitty being the center, and this sort of really works. Even though it's a poster shot, it really works for kind of group stuff. And I think Kirby would do this on the X-Men, but he wouldn't do it for long. And see, finally they get knocked out. All this time, I still thought they were outside. It's hard to really tell that they're in Congress here fighting, right? But it's still a gorgeous book, right? This way you start to establish everything. It's easier to establish. You know they're outside. All right, so this is where the book, towards the end, it really connects. And then you got the death. So you say, I'm spent. I did everything already. How am I going to start with the X-Men? What's going to be number one? I got one other thing for you guys, which would be the last Galactus story. Yes, this is number one. And I'm just going to once again look at the pages. you're saying, how could it be? Look at this first page. It's just space. But this is kind of the not, even though Terry was more in, let's see. So we got this here. Let's take this Indiana Jones period. So this is the easiest way to show it. If you look at this art here, and look at Terry's breaking his line a lot less than he does in sort of this work with a lot of extra detail on it, right? This is going back to the X-Men stuff. And to give you an example of difference between sort of this, see how the line is and the line he does, he's not breaking it as much, even though he does it here. Like he does it here for the rubble. But sort of Nova is really clean, right? And there's a lot of different effects that he's using for it. So he's pulling all the stops, but at the same time using his classic style, right? So you have this issue here, even though the cover looks like it's similar to that stuff. If you look at it, this is where you have that sort of image, sort of the style image would kind of take to, that Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, all those guys would kind of take to, that sort of inking. Which would have, well, mostly, I guess it's mostly a zip on here. But it would feel more like this stuff feels closer to the inking that's here, right? Which I'm not, have nothing against it. I would love to, they've done a series, I think Byrne said he, if he didn't have run into issues with Lucasfilm, he'd probably still be doing that book, right? So, just to give you an example of the difference. So I started it saying there was two Terry Austins. And this one has the old and the new together. So for the rubble scenes, he does the Terry, that sort of Terry stuff. And Nova is pretty much clean, right? So this is where we're ending up our thing. But since I showed you at least 2 issues of X-Men, let me just do a couple more of these. Galactic Story in Epic. So we have this. See a note from the back. That's really cool. And then she's able to see the history through this thing. And you see these older people leaving. This, the so-called Todd McFarlane panels before Todd McFarlane ever did them. I think Rob Liefeld and I know on Twitter Rob Liefeld and what's the other person? Eric Larson saying that Byrne was copying Todd McFarlane. There you go. I think he'd started in the backups of Coyote, so he hadn't done this at all yet. But we meet Galactus, and my last one. This is the one I bought. Well, no, this is my original. Original was beat up, but I rebought this one. This is still the slick line with some of his sort of the detail that he added to stuff. So it's a good meld of doing the old with the new, right? So let's see the slick lines here, like same with Galactus, harkening back to the Byrne and Austin of old. But it's sort of the two of them who've grown a lot in the time they've been apart, and then bringing all of their strengths together. And especially it's a space story, so it's kind of everything that Terry would want to do. Now, I wanted to end it here, but let's do the last one. The last one has, nope. I'm gonna have to do 2. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to do 2. So even though Galactic Story is the big cosmic thing, they have a human moments. Of course, even though he's an alien, the coming of Galactus, this is some really nice stuff. You can see this is ultimately what I'd want Byrne and Austin to do is to work together for a while, and then you start to see them kind of meld again into the unit they were on the X-Men. Not to become the X-Men, but just their different strengths that you would see coming together, right? So this is really nice stuff here. And Byrne was getting a lot more pages to do in this epic thing. And the last issue would be no different, right? But you see the difference between that approach and this one. Galactus comes. He's the one who created you. Right? So we did it.